The crack of a gunshot echoed across my grandfather's ranch, followed by the terrified neighing of horses. I dropped my morning coffee and sprinted toward the stables, my heart pounding against my ribs. There, in the pale dawnlight, stood Patricia Whitmore, HOA president, her pristine white Range Rover blocking my gate, while my prize stallion lay bleeding from a graze wound. Subscribe to witness how a third-generation rancher fights back against an HOA Karen who picked the wrong piece of Texas to mess with. I never wanted trouble with the new development next door. Hell, I barely noticed when they started building those cookie-cutter luxury ranch-style homes on the edge of my property. Grandfather would have laughed at their idea of ranch living, all manicured lawns and decorative wagon wheels. But he's gone now, leaving me 200 acres of hard-work land and a legacy I die defending. That morning started like any other on the Cooper Ranch. I was checking fence lines, something my family's done every sunrise for 3 generations, when I spotted them. Dozens of orange surveyor stakes driven into my pasture land, marking what looked like a trail. The stakes formed a line cutting right through my best grazing field, each one tagged with property of the meadows at Silver Creek HOA. I was still pulling the first stake when the sound of tires on gravel announced her arrival. Patricia Whitmore stepped out of her Range Rover like she was walking onto a movie set, designer boots that had never seen real ranch work gleaming in the morning sun. Her iPad, her modern version of the classic HOA clipboard, was clutched to her chest like a shield. "Mr. Cooper," she called out, her voice dripping with practiced authority. "I see you're interfering with our community improvement project. I planted the stake in the ground between us. Ma'am, this is private property. Has been since before Texas was a state." "Oh, that's where you're mistaken." She tapped her iPad screen with a manicured nail. "According to our community charter, this historic trail provides essential access to the creek. We're simply restoring it for our residents' enjoyment." Historic trail? I couldn't help but laugh. The only trail here is the one my cattle make to water, and it sure ain't open for your yoga classes. Patricia's smile tightened. "Mr. Cooper, times are changing. The meadows represents progress. We've already had several complaints about your operation. The smell, the noise, the unsightly equipment. This trail project is just the beginning of necessary improvements." Improvements? I felt my grandfather's temper rising in my voice. "This is a working ranch, not your personal petting zoo. We'll see about that." She turned on her designer heel. "The board meets next week. I suggest you attend. We'll be discussing several violations regarding your property." I watched her drive away, dust coating her pristine vehicle, and pulled out my phone to call old Bill Martinez next door. His family's ranched here even longer than mine. "Violations?" Bill's weathered laugh crackled through the speaker. "Boy, you can't violate rules you never agreed to. But watch yourself. That woman's been causing trouble all over. Tried to tell me my cattle were improperly housed last month." Looking across the pasture, I could see the new houses rising like mushrooms along my fence line. The historic trail would cut my grazing land in half, and I knew this was just the opening shot in Patricia's war against what she saw as an eyesore in her perfect community. I picked up another surveyor stake, remembering my grandfather's words the day he handed me the ranch deed. "This land ain't just dirt and grass, son. It's blood and sweat and promises kept. Don't let anyone take that from you." As I pulled the stake free, I heard the distant whinny of horses from the stable. Patricia's Range Rover was making another pass along my fence line, and I knew right then this wasn't going to end with a few property stakes. The real fight for Cooper Ranch was just beginning. 3 days after the surveyor stakes incident, I woke to the sound of shouting. Outside my window, a group of Meadows residents in matching athleisure were facing off against Miguel, my ranch foreman, near the cattle pen. Leading them like a general into battle was Patricia, her iPad raised like a shield against the morning sun. "These animals are a health hazard," she was shouting, while her followers nodded in synchronized outrage. "The smell is affecting our property values. I grabbed my hat and boots, already knowing this was going to be one of those days that would have my grandfather rolling in his grave. By the time I reached the group, Patricia had pulled up some kind of digital document on her iPad. According to Municipal Code 47.3, she declared, livestock must be kept at least 500 feet from residential properties. Your cattle pen clearly violates this ordinance. I stepped between her and Miguel. That ordinance doesn't apply to agricultural land that predates residential development. This pen's been here for 60 years. Well, Patricia's smile turned predatory. That's about to change. We've filed a petition to have this area rezoned. The Meadows is expanding, Mr. Cooper, and your quaint operation doesn't fit the community's vision. Before I could respond, Sarah Chun, the local vet, pulled up in her truck. She'd been treating our livestock since taking over her father's practice 5 years ago. The sight of her jumping down from her vehicle, medical bag in hand, made Patricia's group take a collective step back. Is there a problem here? Sarah asked, her voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from actually knowing what you're talking about. I'm here for the herd's quarterly health check. All documented and well within regulations. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Dr. Chun, how convenient. We were just discussing the health risks these animals pose to our community. Sarah pulled out her tablet, a rugged, work-worn device that made Patricia's iPad look like a toy. Interesting, because I have all the health records right here. This ranch maintains some of the highest standards in the county. A few of Patricia's followers began to drift away, their morning workout apparently more appealing than a confrontation with actual facts. But Patricia wasn't finished. She pointed to the creek that ran through the property. What about water rights? Our residents have reported brown water in their taps. Clearly, your cattle are contaminating the watershed. I felt my jaw clench. That creek's been sustaining this ranch's cattle for 3 generations without issue. If your taps are running brown, maybe check the shoddy plumbing work in those cookie-cutter houses you rushed to build. Patricia's face flushed red. The board will hear about this. And don't think we haven't noticed your refusal to submit to HOA oversight. Every other property in this area has joined the Meadows Association. Every other property, I corrected her, isn't a working ranch that was here before your HOA was even a glimmer in a developer's eye. As if on cue, one of my bulls let out a loud bellow, making Patricia's remaining followers jump. Sarah tried to hide her smile as she headed toward the cattle pen. You know, Patricia called after me as I turned to follow Sarah. We're having another board meeting tomorrow night. We'll be discussing mandatory membership requirements for all adjacent properties. You might want to attend, unless you prefer learning about the changes through our attorneys. I watched her lead her dwindling group back toward the Meadows, their designer workout gear pristine despite their supposed morning exercise. Sarah joined me, shaking her head. They tried this with old Bill last month, she said. Claimed his horses were causing noise pollution during their sunset yoga sessions. How'd that work out for them? Sarah grinned. Bill started hosting team roping practice at sunset, said it was a traditional cultural activity. I couldn't help but laugh, but the humor faded as I looked toward the Meadows. Their houses were creeping closer, like an invasive species threatening to choke out native grass. Patricia's threat about rezoning wasn't idle. I'd seen it happen to other ranches, death by 1,000 paper cuts of regulations and ordinances. You should come to that board meeting, Sarah said quietly. I've heard rumors about their plans for the watershed rights. They're trying to force everyone to pipe their water through their treatment facility, at their rates. Of course, I nodded, already knowing tomorrow night would be another battle in this growing war. Patricia might have her iPad and her HOA army, but I had something stronger, the truth about what she was really trying to do to our community, and I was done playing defense. The Meadows clubhouse looked like someone's idea of a ranch house from a TV show, all polished wood and decorative lassos that had never seen a steer. Walking in felt like entering enemy territory, but I wasn't alone. Old Bill Martinez sat beside me, his weathered Stetson defiantly placed on the meeting table. Sarah Chun had come too, armed with a stack of environmental impact reports. Patricia stood at the front, her iPad connected to a giant screen, showing aerial photos of my ranch. The satisfaction on her face reminded me of a cat that had cornered its prey. As you can see, she gestured to red circles on the image. The Cooper property is actively preventing our community's natural growth. But tonight, we're voting on measures that will finally bring this area into the modern era. I noticed something odd about the photos. They were recent, taken from a drone. You've been flying drones over my property. I interrupted. We have every right to document violations, she smiled. Speaking of which, let's talk about your dangerous animals. Just yesterday, they threatened our residents. The screen changed to a video of 3 of my horses grazing peacefully near the fence. A woman in designer hiking gear was trying to feed them through the wire. Your video shows someone trespassing and harassing my livestock, I pointed out. Those horses are worth more than your Range Rover, Patricia. And they're not petting zoo attractions. They're a menace, she snapped. Just like those awful cattle. Which brings us to our first vote. The mandatory relocation of all livestock to the far side of the property, away from our homes. Old Bill stood up, his voice carrying decades of authority. You can't vote on what someone does with private property you don't own. This meeting itself is illegitimate. Mr. Martinez, Patricia's tone dripped condescension. You're not even a member of our association. You're here as a courtesy. I'm here as someone who's watched you try to bully every rancher in this county, Bill shot back. First it was my place. Then the Hendersons had to sell because you tied them up in legal fees. Now you're after the Cooper Ranch. Sarah stood next, pulling up her own presentation. I have documentation showing the environmental impact of forcing livestock away from their natural water source. Not to mention the county regulations protecting established agricultural operations. Patricia's face reddened. This isn't about regulations. It's about progress. Our residents deserve better than living next to some dirty, smelly reminder of the past. Mr. Cooper, your grandfather might have run things his way, but times have changed. The mention of my grandfather lit a fire in my chest. I rose slowly, pulling out my phone. You're right about one thing, Patricia. Times have changed, which is why I have surveillance footage of you cutting my fence last night. The room went dead silent. On my phone screen, clear as day, was Patricia in her designer ranch wear, wire cutters in hand, working on my fence at midnight. The timestamp was perfect. I was removing an unsafe structure, she stammered. You were creating a gap to let my horses onto HOA property, I corrected, probably hoping they'd wander into your precious community so you could call animal control. That's criminal livestock endangerment in Texas. The HOA board members shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a newer resident named Tom, spoke up. Patricia, you said the fence was on HOA property. It was, we have rights to... Patricia's iPad slipped from her hands, clattering on the table. While we're talking rights, I continued, let's discuss the cease and desist letter I received today from the county about your water rights scheme. Seems trying to force ranchers to pay for water they already have legal rights to isn't exactly legal. The room erupted in whispers. Patricia's perfect facade cracked as board members began gathering their things, avoiding her eyes. This meeting isn't over, she shouted. We haven't voted. I think we voted with our consciences, Tom said, standing. Patricia, I move for an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Without you... I watched her face contort as her plans crumbled, but something in her eyes told me this wasn't over. She snatched up her iPad and stormed out, nearly knocking over a decorative saddle by the door. Sarah touched my arm. She's not done, you know. I know, I nodded, thinking of the ranch and everything it stood for. But neither am I. As we left the clubhouse, thunder rolled in the distance. A storm was coming, both literally and figuratively, and I had a feeling Patricia's next move would be her most desperate yet. Lightning split the pre-dawn sky as I raced toward the stables. The ranch's security system had woken me with alerts of movement, and through the cameras, I'd watched Patricia's Range Rover pull up to my gates. She wasn't alone this time. 3 other vehicles accompanied her, their headlights cutting through the storm like angry eyes. My boots hit mud as I ran, and I could hear the panicked sounds of my horses. A flash of lightning illuminated Patricia, standing in the stable doorway, her iPad recording as her followers scattered something across the ground. The smell hit me before I realized what it was. Feed mixed with something chemical. Police! I shouted into my phone as I ran. I've got trespassers at Cooper Ranch trying to poison my horses. I barely registered the dispatcher's response as I watched Patricia's group scramble at the sound of my voice. "You're done, Cooper," Patricia screamed over the wind. "When animal control finds these dangerous, sick horses, they'll shut you down for good." Another vehicle appeared, but this one was familiar, Sarah's truck, throwing mud as she pulled up. She must have heard my call to the police on the ranch's emergency frequency. Close behind her came Old Bill's pickup and then more headlights. Word travels fast in ranch country. Patricia's followers fled to their cars, but she stood her ground, iPad raised like a weapon. "I'm recording everything. You can't stop progress, Cooper. This backward, filthy lifestyle of yours is finished." "The only thing I'm stopping," I growled, reaching her in 3 long strides, "is you poisoning my horses." I knocked the iPad from her hands, sending it splashing into a puddle. She shrieked as if I'd struck her. Red and blue lights appeared on the horizon as Sarah rushed past us into the stable. "Get my kid from the truck," she yelled to someone. "And don't let any of these horses near that feed." Patricia tried to make a run for her Range Rover, but slipped in the mud, her designer boots betraying her. She sat there, once perfect hair plastered to her face, as police cars surrounded us. The sight would have been funny if I hadn't been so furious. "It's all his fault," she screamed at the approaching officers. "He's destroying our property values. He attacked me. I was just protecting our community." By trespassing and attempting to poison livestock came a familiar voice. Tom, the HOA board member from last night's meeting, stepped into the light. He held up his phone, still recording. "I followed you after you called this emergency community defense meeting. Got everything on video, including your instructions about the poison feed." The officers didn't need much time to assess the situation. As they led Patricia toward a patrol car, she kept screaming about property values and community standards. Her followers, already in custody in other cars, looked anywhere but at their fallen leader. Dawn broke as Sarah emerged from the stables. "Horses are all fine. We got here in time. And the rain actually helped, kept them away from whatever she was spreading." Old Bill clapped my shoulder. Guess she really didn't know ranch folk look after their own. I looked around at the gathered neighbors. Not just ranchers, but families from the meadows too. They'd come out in a storm, in the middle of the night, to stand against someone who'd tried to destroy a way of life she didn't understand. The next few weeks brought changes. Patricia faced criminal charges. Livestock endangerment is serious business in Texas. The HOA underwent a complete restructuring, with Tom as the new president. His first act was to pass a resolution recognizing and protecting the rights of existing ranches bordering the meadows. "You know," Tom said to me over coffee at the local diner a month later, "most of us moved here because we loved this landscape, this lifestyle. We wanted to be part of it, not pave over it." I nodded, understanding. My grandfather used to say good fences make good neighbors, but good neighbors make fences unnecessary. The old man would have been proud to see how things turned out. The Meadows residents now bring their kids to learn about ranch life, and we host community events that blend the old and new. Sarah even started a program teaching horse care to interested families. As for Patricia's historic trail markers, we use them to line a real trail, one where people can walk, learn about ranching history, and see this way of life up close. Every morning, I still check the fences, tend to my horses, and watch the sunrise over land that's been in my family for generations. Only now, when I wave to the neighbors, they wave back, understanding that preserving tradition doesn't mean resisting progress. It means protecting what matters while welcoming change that respects the heart of this place. The war for Cooper Ranch was over, but its legacy was just beginning, teaching a lesson about community that no HOA manual could ever capture.